So as we pick up in Jonah 2, we just covered that Jonah was found in the belly of a whale. He kept going down, 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 down. And Jesus, God, met him where he was at. And at this point, Jonah is in the belly of a whale for multiple days, not understanding what exactly is going on. And then he remembered something, that God is his pursuer. And he prays to the Lord, and we're going to pick up in chapter 2, verse 1. And it says this: Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep and into the hearts of the seas. And the flood surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall look again upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land whose bars closed me up forever. Yet you brought my life from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Now, how did Jonah get into this situation? The reality is Jonah is a prophet. Jonah's job is to declare the word of the Lord to the nations. But when God said, arise, go to Nineveh, Jonah didn't want to go. But why? Because Nineveh was a wicked and vile place where they put people on a stake in front of their city walls to warn people, if you come in, you could perish immediately. And Jonah didn't want to see them saved. Jonah knew the characteristics of God. Jonah knew that God would redeem this nation. And Jonah didn't want it to happen. And so now Jonah runs, and God pursues him. And Jonah prays this prayer as he remembers who God is. And in verse 1 it says, out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. Now Sheol is a Hebrew word that means the underground. It's like a grave. It's like a dark, isolated place. And the belly of a whale is probably very similar to that. And so as Jonah's at his deepest, darkest point, alone, isolated, almost in a grave-like setting, almost like a dead setting, he remembers the Lord. But the Lord never forgot Jonah. And as his prayer goes on, he talks about the temple. He talks about God's holy temple. In verse 4 it says, Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. God's temple, that's where God is found. Jonah looks to God's temple to find Jesus, to find God. But God was already there. And this is what we have. If we look back at Easter a few days ago, we see that the veil in the temple was torn, that God was unleashed upon us, that Jesus was resurrected and left his Holy Spirit with us. And so now what we get to do as Christ followers is we get to unleash God on other people. We have his Holy Spirit. We get to be the presence of God. There is no more temple. There's churches, and we are the church. And so like Jonah remembered that God is the temple, we need to remember that we are to go out and spread the good news of Christ. Even in our darkness, even in our sin, even in our struggle, even in our lack of unbelief, God meets us where we're at. God redeems us where we're at.